The first era of AI was about individual productivity. The second era was about automation. The next era will be about generating outcomes. And in professional services, the firms that win will be those that combine AI-driven execution with human judgment. Hello, everyone, and welcome to theCUBE Conversation, kicking off International Services Week 2026. I'm Scott Hebner, Principal Analyst for AI at theCUBE Research. Professional services are entering their most consequential period of transformation in a long, long time. AI is moving beyond experimentation and becoming embedded directly in professional services delivery. It's reshaping how firms sell, staff, deliver, and scale client outcomes. But as AI accelerates execution, a critical question emerges. What separates firms that generate real business value from those that are stuck in automation mode, or even worse, pilot mode? To explore that question, I'm joined by Prasad Sulur, the Chief Business Officer at Certinia, and Matt Cook, a partner focused on business transformation at PwC. Together, we're going to discuss how AI is changing the economics of professional services, why trust and governance have become critical, and why human judgment is becoming more valuable, not less, as intelligent systems take a larger role in delivery. So guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Amazing. Scott, thank you for having us.
It's great getting you guys together here. And let's start with the big picture here. So professional services has always been obviously a people business. What has changed over the last 18 months that makes this moment fundamentally different from previous waves of automation and digital transformation? And maybe we'll start with you, Prasad.
Yeah. Scott, it's a great question. Having spent 20 plus years in professional services and now working in Certinia, where we are leading and driving the transformation of professional services and the software that goes with it, it's kind of one of the questions that keeps me up at night pretty much every day. And kind of what is exciting for me is the following. If you look at the value that professional services adds, it comes back to a few things, right? We deliver an outcome. The basis of the outcome is you're delivering some portion of value. The value is either in the software that you're delivering to your customer, in the recommendation that you're making, in the kind of process redesign, something that you're doing. And at the end of the day, the key insight that is embedded there is what is different going forward versus what was there before. But to get to that kind of an insight, you're having to do a lot of what I might call as more simple work. And AI creates tremendous opportunity to kind of free you up from the burden of doing a lot of the simple work, like updating a project plan, like having to create a document that you've done many times with a few variations, and focus more on the things that make you unique and different. And from that perspective, freeing up like your critical resources to have 50, 60, 70% of their time to judgment and to the real insights that matter is going to drive tremendous value going forward versus what it was before.
What about you, Matt? What are you seeing out there? You agree with the premise here that I set up, and then Prasad?
Yeah, I mean, Scott, completely right. And I think also having spent most of my career in the professional services game, I completely agree, Prasad, with a bunch of the things that you say there. In principle, what are we selling in professional services and consulting is we're selling trust. Part of selling trust is selling predictability, i.e. we can tell you how it's going to feel and it actually will feel that way. We can share with you what the journey is going to look like, but we'll get you to a defined outcome. What's been interesting lately is, to Prasad's point, in terms of how do we help automate some of the easier, lower cognitive load tasks to give us the ability to spend more time on the higher cognitive load outcomes and activities. I mean, traditionally, what is a professional services firm like ours? Our value proposition is we're surrounded by incredible intellectual property. We have incredibly talented humans that have seen the problem and solved the problem before. We've got a bunch of artifacts that we would use to help accelerate us through that journey. We've got a defined process and methodology. Importantly, we follow a pretty rigid governance structure. Now, when you bring all those things together, that talks about trust. But what's interesting now, and we're starting to see, is how AI is impacting that. And as the thin wedge of the spear, as it were, our clients are often looking to us to say, how is AI impacting you? How is AI impacting you as organizations? And how can that value translate to us? So I think absolutely, I would completely agree with Prasad, but my kind of add point there would be clients have been buying trust from us for years. The view here is that doesn't change. It's just how we get to that outcome.
Yeah.
Matt, if I can layer on one point, Scott, if you go back to the history of professional services and you trace it back over the last, since the 1970s, when I was at Bain, like we would always say in the 1970s, what we would do is you would use literally numerical kind of like manual kind of sheets, and you would cut paper to create a chart. And that chart would be the key insights. A lot of the data would be collected by going to a factory and counting the number of cars there, or going and doing research and then tabulating that, right? Then when computers became more broadly available, the key insight changed from go and do this manually to figure out, you have like an hour slot on the computer, figure out what program you're going to write to do the key analysis you need to do to generate the insight. From there, once you started to have desktop PCs and you had some data available, you started using new ways to do it. Then when you come back to the internet era, suddenly more data was available, things could get done faster, cloud was available so you could code faster. So for the same scope and the same duration and the same cost, the expectations were more. I just look at AI as the next inflection of that. We now have the ability, when you talk about outcomes, to not just give you a recommendation, perhaps we could even give you a product and manifest in the product the software that's going to deliver for you the outcomes that you want, or take it a step beyond. Here is like a paper recommendation of a business process redesign to, in the same time frame, doing the redesign. And the reason why I'm so bullish about professional services is, and you've seen this over the last 40 to 50 years, as you deliver more outcomes, Jevon's paradox comes into play because the demand goes up. They're like, wow, more can get done. The competitive playing field has changed. We have to be more competitive as a company to do more, and we need more from our professional services partners to get to the outcome. So it's just worth keeping that in mind as you think about how AI is going to drive the next value of judgment and outcomes, in my view.
Yeah, as I spend my everyday activity doing research and having all these conversations with players across the industry, obviously focused on enterprise AI, I think we've had a little bit of an inflection point going on here after the last several years of hyper growth, where companies are like stepping back for a second and really focusing on ROI and outcomes. And if I was to describe the state of enterprise AI in one word, it would be trust. It seems to be at the center of every conversation, and it's the trust issue, not a technical issue, but a trust issue, which, by the way, is multidimensional, right? Could be explainability, could be auditability. Do I trust it? Is it defensible? Is it accurate? Is it secure? Is the data there's a whole bunch of different angles to it, but ultimately it comes down to trust. And obviously everyone wants to get over that inflection point and ramp up investment, but they're slowing down a little bit to try to figure this out. And do you think, as we start looking to generate real business outcomes and transformation, that professional services is becoming the first major industry where we're seeing this really play out at scale, this shift?
Yeah, I mean, Scott, I would absolutely. I think I mentioned it earlier on, the thin end of the wedge, right? I do, however, think there's a nuance in that. So I agree with trust. I think the difference now with AI is where we're seeing AI leaders win is they're not simply deploying better tools, they're actually redesigning how that value is created. So it's not just a case of how do we get to the outcome faster. There was the well-quoted old business book around how do you make the boat go faster. I actually think now it's around thinking about how we change our entire business model and use AI in terms of how we sell, how we staff, how we deliver, how we govern, and how we assure those outcomes. Yes, we're able to get it in a shorter time frame, but the real value is not just in the compression of tasks. It's in changing the operating model to think about what are the outcomes that we have the ability to achieve now that we didn't necessarily have the ability to achieve before, to Prasad's point. And I think that's where the really exciting part is. And from our business, if we're in the game of helping our clients improve their businesses, improve their business models, and achieve outcomes, our business is always going to be at the forefront of this change, and embracing it and embedding it is critical for our ability to be successful.
Matt, I love what you said, right? Let me build on top of it. Scott, I'll put it in numbers in a very simple way, right? To Matt's point, like if my AI was accurate 95% of the time, as a CFO in a finance organization, if I was using that AI, my company might go bankrupt.
Mhm.
Right? And so the trust very much comes down to, do I trust the answers the AI is giving me? And do I trust the system that sits behind it? And then how do I take advantage of that trust to get to the outcomes that I believe in, right? And so what I would tell you, and Matt is spot on, is it is very easy for me to use AI and achieve micro productivity. Like I could generate something, it looks really good, it's very polished. But by the way, there might be massive assumptions and errors embedded 10 pages in that you hadn't even noticed. And that is more work that you have to do to QA it, proofread it, make the edits, make sure it's okay, than it is if you wrote the document yourself. And that is kind of what the lack of trust signifies. And so to the point that Matt's making on process redesign, what we are discovering and what we are focused on is there is an entire system and there is an entire set of body of work called harness engineering that is emerging, where we are running thousands and thousands of tests to understand, are we getting predictable outcomes for thousands of inputs that are going into AI? And what are all the things we have to put around it in terms of the data that is fed in terms of the evals that are used to measure the quality that comes out, in terms of the errors that need to be corrected to create a trust-based system. And so if you then step back to it and leading by judgment, at the end of the day, the people that are sitting in orchestrating and building this are the ones who are bringing judgment to the process that is going to make the real difference. And then once you then have that system and that's constantly improving, to the point we discussed earlier, you're now able to apply insights on top of it because you have now freed up your time that you can trust the outcome that AI is producing to then get to the value you want to drive on top in a new kind of redesign process.
Yeah, you're right. When you get into these consequential AI use cases, real business consequence based on decisions and things of defensibility and auditability and having evidence and all that, it's sort of like, you can eat healthy food 99% of the time, but 1% rat poison still kills you, right? So I think it is slowing down deployments and so-called, people get stuck in the pilot mode and experimentation mode, and just that realization of outcomes. And, Matt, on the subject of numbers, you guys, PwC, I've been reading a lot of your research recently. It's really great. And one of my takeaways was a relatively small group of organizations are generating, outsized, as you said, business outcomes from AI. Tell us a little bit about what your findings of these surveys are and what are the leaders that are doing better, doing differently, that other firms can learn from.
Scott, I think to share some of that, the one that I would start with is our 29th Global CEO survey. We found that only 1 in 8 CEOs report that AI has delivered both revenue growth and cost reduction, but more than half report no significant financial benefit to date. Now that makes you question, with the value promise of AI, why are more than half the CEOs reporting no financial benefit? And it's a combination of a couple of reasons. One is the failure to launch because of the fear and how we manage the governance, and that's absolutely true. One of the other ones is the failure to get AI into production into a way that is meaningfully impacting our current workflows. But I actually think what we're seeing here is not just treating AI as a productivity sidecar. So what we saw early on was AI was helping with personal productivity and helping you summarize emails and respond to emails. But the leaders that we are seeing generate significant value are embedding it into their products, services, workflows, and their decision-making. But again, it just leaves more emphasis on the judgment. And I think that's the piece that's really important, is as AI moves more into delivery, the more important human judgment becomes. And I suppose just kind of landing that, 80% of the surveyed companies that we spoke to are already adopting AI agents. And nearly 90% of them say they're planning to increase those budgets because of agentic AI. But our view would be broad adoption of AI doesn't necessarily mean that they're transforming their organizations, because most organizations are still using it for that routine task acceleration. Now, that's an important place to start, but the real value becomes or gets unlocked when you redesign those workflows end to end. Prasad?
Yeah. No, look, that is spot on. To bring an example to what Matt is saying to life, we had, in my previous job, we had worked with like some companies where you literally, if you're paving the cowpaths, like you gave everybody an AI tool and you were using your existing process and you were trying to automate your existing process, what you're going to do is you're going to take, let's say you're trying to launch a new feature, and launching the new feature takes 5 to 6 months in your existing process. You're writing the requirements, you're doing the development, you're testing, then you're merging it in the general kind of structure, and then you're releasing it. And you give everybody AI tools. Like you may like code faster, and maybe you reduced your development time from 1 month to 2 weeks, but it's still going to be stuck waiting for the testing phase to come about. It's still going to be wait for the release phase, and you're not going to release any faster just because you happen to code faster with AI. And so you have to completely rethink your development process to say, I'm going to write my requirements, and as I write my requirements, I'm automatically going to convert it to code, and I'm going to automate the testing process. And maybe I can now do releases on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis. Same thing for marketing. I can move from, it takes me 6 months to write like an article, a serious article, to now maybe I can write it in 6 weeks because I get all the input first. I make the people who are coming up with the ideas use AI to create a draft that gets their ideas as clear as possible. Then I can take it and do all the editing process, and completely transforms how you create article writing. The quality doesn't change, but the process is completely redesigned. And I think this is the picture that Matt is highlighting and companies need to think about. How do you rethink the work? Like in professional services, as an example, we are seeing a lot of AI first professional services firms come about that are completely rethinking how existing projects should be done. Hey, if I'm doing a market study project, how can I get all the research off the shelf based on whatever is available? What are the new things I need to do? How can I supplement that? And how do I get to an outcome in weeks, not months? These are all in the early stages. And so there are some pockets of success, but I wouldn't declare that it's been fully solved. But that mindset and how you think about the work and what you can do and how that should then be transformative in the output, but thoughtful in each step to get to the quality and trust that you want is going to be what the successful firms will demonstrate.
I mean, sorry, Scott, I'm just going to kind of close that off, right? Because Prasad, I agree with you. I think the challenge is the industry needs to be careful, because if we only use AI to compress hours, we're missing the bigger prize. I think the opportunity here is to improve quality, consistency, speed, insight, and those commercial outcomes. But what was interesting for me is where we see value is not in fragmented, disconnected experiments with AI. It's with focused investments in high-value workflows or business processes. And I think this is the important point that we're both really trying to make, is the firms that win will be the ones that can turn AI into repeatable, measurable outcomes, not the ones with the most tools.
Yeah, and to kind of back that up, one of the findings from our recent Agentic AI Futures Index, which was a survey of about 625 AI enterprise leaders, was that 62% of them envision, in terms of their investment stream over the next 18 months, to shift to judgment-based knowledge work, right? Things like the ability to diagnose and solve problems, improve decision-making in a defendable, explainable way, guide action planning, even in some cases to work on behalf of workers. Sort of that next step beyond, as you said, cost savings, automation, provisioning a laptop, real consequential work that is knowledge work that requires judgment by definition. And I found that really fascinating. That jumped out to me, that there is an aspiration and a vision among, a broader enterprise set to move into that next phase. What do you think about that? That's professional services, right? It's knowledge work.
I mean, completely right. I would say, our view is the first thing we need to do is start with the value, not just the technology. So it's not just about using technology to automate a task. We need to pick workflow where there's a real commercial metric: revenue conversion, delivery margin, cycle time, quality, client experience, etc. Right? The second thing, though, is embedding AI into that core business process so that it's not just at the edge. And I mentioned a little bit about our CEO survey, and the high flyers are more likely to apply AI to product, services, and experiences. And I think, Scott, that's what you allude to. Yeah. But importantly, we talk about making sure that they invest in those foundations, so data quality, architecture, process visibility, etc. And then we get to the point you were making, which is about redesigning work i.e. we rethink roles, we rethink governance, we rethink handoffs, and importantly, we rethink the human decisions that matter. And then I think the last one is, treat trust as a growth enabler. It's not just a defensively compliant strategy. It's what actually gives us the ability to scale. So in our world, from a professional services perspective, trust and governance, but start with value. Think about how you embed it in your core business, which is what we're doing, i.e. changing the way we're working, but not abstracting the value of human judgment and governance.
Yep. If I can lay on to what Matt is saying, a lot of this sounds pretty straightforward, and it's not. And the reason for that is, I think as an organization, there are two important things in the how that really need to come together. The first is, a lot of this change is top-down driven in a sense that you're changing the way things need to be done in a very uncomfortable way. And you need to have top-down conviction to almost burn the boats, to go and announce an organizational direction that may or may not work because you're taking a leap of faith. And then it requires bottom-up proficiency. Your AI is going to be only, and your processes only as going to be good as the people who are orchestrating it and managing it. They have to kind of push the boundaries of what they can do internally. They have to build the confidence to say, oh, we did this and it worked, and we see this and we fixed it. And so you as a leader and the organization as a team all need to get very proficient with AI to go in and be able to say, hey, we as an organization are now getting very comfortable. We've seen this automation opportunity. We've seen this redesign opportunity. It is starting to work in this step of the thing. Now we can take it to these 3 steps. So the combination of the top-down mandate and kind of what I call the bottom-up kind of proficiency that your organization has is what's going to move the ball forward. The mistake that I see is, you've seen the public announcements, company X has automated like 80% of the process with something, and you get very excited. You're like, oh, we should go do it. Or even let's hire some external firm to come in and get the software, and it's magically going to work. And it's not. Because you also have to own that and drive that in the organization as you take it forward.
Yeah, I mean, Prasad, you've highlighted a really important point for me, actually. Clients aren't just buying output, right? They're buying confidence. Is this the right recommendation? What are the risks? What trade-offs have we considered? Who's accountable, right? And I think what's important here is, to the point you spoke about the marketing context, etc. AI can accelerate evidence gathering and scenario development, but it doesn't carry professional accountability. That remains human. And I think, to your point, the bottom-up and the top-down in combination is critical. The bottom-up gives us the tasks we can, the data that's available. The top-down gives us the confidence and the accountability.
Well said.
Yeah, and I think that's right on. And, if I was sort of summarize, I mean, when we're recording this right now, we're entering into Services Week 2026, right? And if you haven't been out there, in terms of everyone listening, it's servicesweek.com. Great set of conversations out there. But the theme this year is accelerating with AI, leading with judgment. And I think if I was to summarize the conversation so far, what you're saying is human expertise is actually becoming more valuable as AI takes on a larger role, not less. 2 is the anchor is becoming not output, but outcomes.
Yeah.
And then what that's doing is fundamentally, transforming the economics of professional services as an industry. And, got that right so far?
Yeah, I mean, Scott, I think you're on track there, right? One of our global surveys is the AI Jobs Barometer. And we say AI is almost creating a 2-track labor market where skills such as judgment and leadership are becoming more critical and more rewarded. But it's also found that the most AI-exposed junior roles are 7 times more likely to demand traditionally senior skills like leadership. So I think, the way I would look at it is, as intelligence becomes cheaper, judgment becomes more valuable. AI can give you the answers, but leaders still have to decide which answer deserves trust. And I think those just really stood out for me in the way you positioned that.
Yeah. Trust is becoming, my observation, as I was saying earlier, trust is becoming the currency of AI ROI, right? I mean, in the end, the users need to trust it. Otherwise, they're not going to use the tools and the agents. The outcomes have to be trusted, not only because, the real business consequential, but, there's audit trails, there's, just because AI said so doesn't make it auditable and compliant, right? So, and I think the other thing that's going on too, and I'll be curious to your observation on this, let's just talk a little bit about how here a little bit. The other shift I think is happening now is we're moving beyond the so-called model wars, foundation model wars, and model selection is not the most strategic thing going forward. It's how you build around the models to deliver a trust and governance-based framework, if you will, right? That understands institutional knowledge, understands context, has memory of what's been happening, what's been going on, knows who the players are and things of that nature. So talk to me a little bit about where you see AI going in terms of a little bit more of an architectural, how to do this, how to get to outcomes perspective. Prasad, maybe start with you.
Yeah, no, look, I have this slide where I laid out what I call as the new tech architecture or the tech stack for services. And specifically what it has, it is, you have various tasks and services, whether you want to call it as research, configuration, data migration, like recommendations. So you have like a layer of what I call as services work or services tasks. And oftentimes you either will be using an LLM or you'll be using some kind of a third-party application that is like the tip of the spear in terms of what is helping you generate the output. But there is an entire stack that is sitting behind it. To me, there are two important elements of the tech stack that are to me like going to be really important going forward. One is what I'm calling as the workflow orchestration layer. And what is in the workflow orchestration layer is knowing kind of the set of tasks that need to be done for a given project and knowing kind of what the inputs are for each and like how it should go through. Because that context is going to become super important for any AI, any tool that you're using to know I am in the design phase of the work. This was the previous work that was done or submitted that I should have as context. These are previous design examples. This is the scope of the work I'm trying to do. All of that needs to be fed in the right way in context for you to get the outcomes you want. And the workflow layer helps you get that. The second kind of layer of the tech stack that becomes really important is the data layer. One of the biggest things that's emerged in the last, I think, 12 to 18 months is a recognition that many companies have been solving the wrong data problem. We have kind of created these big data lakes of structured data, which is all really important, the number of customers, the revenue per customer, the projects that you've done, et cetera. But the real gold mine sits in the unstructured data. And the conversion of the unstructured data into the structured data, whether you use a knowledge graph, whether you use other things, where you can get like whether it's called golden templates, which refer to like what good looks like for a given specific situation, for a given specific client, the kind of inputs of like the meeting transcripts that took place, the emails that have happened, the Slack team chats, the kind of prior project work that can be used. But by the way, you've put too much data, it's not going to have the context, you're going to get garbage out. How do you kind of look at that full set of data and identify the right critical pieces that then get provided in the right phase of the workflow to get to the outcome, and how you do it in a secured and governed way? And security and governance and permissions where you don't incorrectly expose proprietary data to users through an AI. Like that to me is the new tech stack that is going forward, that is going to be real important and a whole new set of concepts the companies haven't spent as much time thinking about in the past.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, look, we're coming up on time here. One last question for both of you. So let's fast forward a little bit here. We're sitting here, let's say 2 years from now, 18 months from now. What does the next generation of these AI-powered services organizations look like? I mean, what is success going to be compared to what people look at it today and through the eyes of your clients?
I mean, Scott, if I can give you a view quickly, when AI can produce more analysis than a human can read, the differentiator is not more content, it's better judgment. And I think to your point, Prasad, around the data, the unstructured data, we've been trying to solve the unstructured data problem for years, right? What AI can help give us now is the ability to turn sentiment into intelligence and help give us the opportunity for better judgment. I think that's really important. Prasad, what do you think?
No, I love that. Look, I think that is this, when you look at the scaling laws of what AI is doing and the speed at which they're going, there has been consistently positive surprises on the upside in how much more capable AI becomes. And there is more opportunities for improvement in AI. So even like Fable or whatever is the latest model we're looking at now, I'm pretty sure it's going to be improved 12 to 18 months from now. And so we're going to have more powerful systems that can produce more outcomes based on the input that you feed to it. But what is pretty amazing, despite all of the improvements that have taken place in AI, is as the bar moves, the point that Matt is making, which is what are the inputs that come in, what is the output that goes out, and what's the judgment that is needed to get to it, hasn't fundamentally changed. And what is getting better and more clear to the questions you asked previously as well, Scott, is people are getting a better awareness of all the systems that need to sit around it, the limitations of how far it can go, and kind of what it can do. And to me, like what is going to be great for clients is when you buy a professional services project, you know that you're going to get really good people who are going to spend 80% of their time on the issues that really matter to you to get you to the outcomes. And by the way, like the 20% that gets automated away, or like the spend with the AI and like all the stuff that is really required to keep a project humming or to do something, that's going to get taken care of automatically. So the combination of the two is going to be really valuable. And the one last point I'd add, and I know, Matt, when we've had the discussion, you've thought a lot about this too, is that it's going to be a compounding effect for professional services firms, where the ones who have really invested in the trust systems and the knowledge systems in the domain and in the way they do that is going to be a lights out, completely different kind of operation from the ones who have just done micro productivity or experimentation, because they're not going to be able to deliver at the same scope, quality outcomes that customers are going to look for.
Yeah, I agree with both of you and everything you guys said. It's right on. And look, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be here. This has been a great conversation. Actually, very meaningful, and I think strategic in terms of not only where professional services needs to head, but I think it's a model for other industries. And you guys made a real compelling case, I think, today that the future of professional services certainly isn't about choosing between AI and people. It's about combining these AI-driven execution capabilities with human judgment, and that's the key to getting those better judgments, the stronger client relationships, and sustainable growth. So, great conversation. I appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you again. Thanks for hosting the Scott, and thanks for the conversation.
You bet. And for all of you out there, don't forget to check out International Services Week 2026. Servicesweek.com is where you can go. I'm Scott Hebner with theCUBE Research. Thanks so much for watching. We'll all see you again soon.